Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Marine X back at it again. Let's jump into it, man. This is my review of the Benrus Type 1C military reissue watch. I like it. If you want the bottom line up front, let's just keep it real. Let's just keep it a buck. Let's just do the bluff. If you're looking for a watch that has a tool type feel, it has a military story, military feeling, super durable, can do almost anything you need it to do, whether you're going 1,000 feet underwater or 30,000 feet up in the air. It has a great warranty and it's from an authentic company. Then here you go. Go ahead, snatch yourself up the Benrus Type 1C. But if you want to know what I like about this thing and why I think it's actually worth the nearly $1,500 that it costs for this thing MSRP, but it oftentimes goes on sale. So check the links in the description for the best available pricing on this thing. Then stick around. So first off, the original Type 1 was a military dive watch made for the U.S. Navy SEALs back in the Vietnam era. Of course, Benrus was the winner of that contract. And similar to the watches that were needed for the British military back in World War II, the military understands that they only can make so much of a certain item, whether it's bullets or watches or vehicles or whatever. So they award contracts to companies. So back in, World War II, there was an award for the original 12 companies that made the Dirty Dozen watches. Then we come up to the Vietnam era and we had companies that were awarded contracts to make watches for different subsects of the military. We had folks making field watches. Benrus made field watches that went into Vietnam. Benrus also made dive watches that were worn by Navy SEALs. They went on nuclear subs. They were worn by Navy pilots. They also were worn by CIA officers, other DoD personnel. They were never issued to civilians. They were never available to the public. So those original Type 1s that were issued are hard to find. They're not a lot in circulation nowadays. If you find one, they are worth upwards of $5,000 or $6,000. We all understand that good things do come to an end, and Benrus eventually did close its doors. However, some investors came back. They reopened their doors in 2016, and they started issuing legitimate military reissues of the old specifications with super minor tweaks to make, easier watch bands and stuff fit like that on there. But they're absolute bangers. They come from the heritage. They come with those specifications with the heritage of the company themselves. And that's one thing that I think is important when it comes to the story of the Benrus watches overall, but specifically the Type 1 and the Type 1C. This Type 1C is a 2024 model. It's basically the C stands for color. I think I'm going to guess what color, because they do come in different colors. You can get it in this white color. I think they have it in a blue and orange, and then they have it in a black. I actually kind of really dig the way that white face looks on there. And when you originally get this thing, you do get it with white tropical straps. I swapped those out for some black tropical straps. Benrus also sells watch straps. You can swap those out. But even if you don't buy the watch straps from Benrus, they use a very common 20mm quick change mechanism on the back of these bad boys. So you can swap these out as you see fit. So that makes life that much easier for you to pick them up third party or use the ones that you may already have. It means you can also put a bracelet on this, because it is pretty easy to swap this thing out without anything at all. We will say this is a chunky watch. Okay, this is a big old chunky boy. This thing comes in at 42.5 millimeters for the case, 15 millimeters in thickness. So I have a relatively medium sized wrist, almost on a large size, and it looks okay on my wrist. If you have a smaller wrist, this may feel a little bit big for you, and it only comes in one size option, kind of sticking tried and true to the original issues back in the day. So you may feel that whenever you put this thing on. However, it is a bead blasted 316L stainless steel. What does all that mean? That means that this is a medical grade stainless steel, which is made to take bumps, bruises, dings, hypoallergenic. You can wear it every day and it does not get on your nerves, and it's easy to clean and to maintain, meaning you can do it like for everyday type uses, which is what I have been doing religiously since this was sent to me. Did I mention that Benrus is sponsoring this video? They're not paying me any money for the video, but they did send this watch over for a review. So icto facto, this is why I have this watch, but even if I didn't have this watch and I got to experience it, comparing it to my few other dive watches I have, this is the highest quality. As much as I love the other makers that I have, this one has that, not only the quality and the things it's able to do, but it also has the military story behind it, and it makes it that much better. So on the market nowadays, there are a ton of Benrus Type 1 homages, and Benrus being reopening their doors in 2016, they don't have to call it homage. It legit comes from them. It's a military reissue. So that gets you something else knowing if you decide to pick this bad boy up. The details like the case design, the bezel, all these things are coming from the company itself. The bezel's easy to use. It's not unidirectional like a lot of dive watches. You can use it bidirectional, which was a specification that was super important for the US military, so that you can use this thing, but it has a nice amount of resistance to it. So you can't accidentally bump the bezel and it not be in place exactly where you want it. One thing I also like about the bezel a ton is that between the 0 minute and up to 20 minutes, there is a marker or a tick mark. So you literally know exactly how many minutes have gone off if you decide to use this thing to keep track of time or whatever the case may be. That's a step up on some other dive watches that I have, because they all have the unidirectional or the bezel that you can move around, but not a lot of them have those tick marks. That's usually an extra feature and a level of detail that I super do well appreciate. It does have a depth rating of 30 ATM. I had to look that up. I don't know what that means. Okay. What it basically means is that for every 10 ATMs, or if I'm mispronouncing, if you're supposed to say it some cheesy way, I'm not a watch guy. Okay. This is an EDC guy who is further getting away from his smartwatch and liking watches. This can go about 1,000 feet underwater or 300 meters and withstand the depths of that part of the ocean or sea or whatever the heck you're under. That means that this is legit a hard use dive watch that could be worn by divers. So it is smoking some of the competition just in that type of specification alone. It is using a SOP rod P024 automatic movement with a 38 power reserve time on this bad boy. And the thing about this, it is Swiss made. Although it is Swiss made, it's almost kind of like an oxymoron on the back here. It has a big old American flag stamped on the back of the case, but it says Swiss made all around it. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a little weird. I don't know if the original Type 1Cs had American flag stamped on them and that's why they did it, or what, but it's still very nice. I think it would have been nice to have that sapphire crystal back so you could see the movement, but I don't think they could achieve the depth rating of the water resistance if they would have did that. So taking that stainless steel around the back makes a lot of sense to give it that type of work. It does come with a BWG9 Super Luminova, and basically meaning that this bad boy, once it goes dark, the lume is something that allows you to read the actual dial, read it really well. And in comparison to some of their competitors, this lume lasts relatively for a good chunk amount of time. So if you're an actual diver and not a desk diver or a desk jockey, you're going to be confident to know that you can wear this watch while you're doing your day job, while you're diving, while you're just working on your house or whatever. It kind of fits in all those modes. I've worn this on nights on the town. I've worn this around the house. I've worn this in all sorts of scenarios. I've used it for rucking. It's very versatile. Now, I know how to swim. I know how to dive. I know how to use a respirator. I've only been diving twice. I know how to snorkel. I've been swimming in the ocean. I've done all that stuff. And if I were doing that stuff today, this would be the watch I would confidently just throw on my wrist and forget about it. Just forget that it was on, forget that I was wearing it, and just quite enjoy that and not have to worry about it. We got to talk about a few cons when this thing is. The downside to being a chunky boy is that this can wear a little bit big on the wrist, and the actual lugs are a little bit long. So that's something that you need to think about. If your wrist really will define how this looks. The watch itself is a good looking watch, but if you have a really small wrist, I don't know if this is going to work for you overall. It will. But it will hang over small wrist if you decide to buy this, just trying to keep that openness with you. I want you to understand what that's going to look like. I had to test this out on the wife's wrist. I could see there's a chunky boy. She has small wrists, so it might not be for you specifically. If they do bump this out with a second version, even if it's not to the mil spec, it would be nice if it was like a 39, maybe a 36 millimeter. I mean, 36 is extremely small. It's like a dirty dozen type of size, but you know, if we can get like a 38 or 39 millimeter, I think that this would suit as a second size option for a lot of people. Now, the dial is big and easy to read. The colors allow for everything to pop off the face of that. So I have it in white. You can read this very easily at a glance. I love that. Even if you get the original Type 1, that's easy to read. But these new variants, the color variants, they're still very easy to read. And no matter if you're taking a quick glance, you don't have to stop and see what you're doing and stop and see what time it is. It's very quick and easy to read. I like that. So the pop of color on the actual hour and the minute hand, I think is a nice touch. Depending on what color you get, you'll get that pop of color on the hour and minute hand. So that pop of white. Then on the bezel itself, it has that pop of color, which makes it incredibly easy to read. So I think that's a lot of thoughtfulness and makes a lot of sense why it's so easy to kind of just dial this thing in. It is what it is. It does have a lockdown screw down crown. You unscrew it here, and once you get it unscrewed to a certain distance, then you pull it out, and that's how you actually move it. So that having that lockdown screw down crown is incredibly important for the purposes of knowing that this thing actually is going to maintain water resistance. If it was just a push crown or something like that, that would be a big issue when it came to maintaining that water resistance. Now, the actual watch back itself, I'm not going to open it, but if you have one of those tools that can get into those little six crevices there, you can actually open this up relatively easily. Small details, but I think that's pretty important. So if you need to take this in for maintenance, or if you're a watch guru and you can do your own maintenance, you'd be able to get in there very easily. No screws, no worrying about stripping anything out or anything, whatever the case may be. One thing I failed to mention is that of all the watches I get, Benrus is literally the only company that gives me a travel case with my watch. And I know that sounds small, but I have a lot of watches. And even when I travel, there are times when you go through security or whatever, when your watch just has a little bit too much metal, you absentmindedly want to take it off. Is it not nice to want to be able to just take this bad boy off and stick it in this like fake fur lined padding? Yeah, I think those small details matter. I have some watches that are over $1,000 and they don't come with these smaller details. So here's the deal. The Type 1C by Benrus. This is a watch for history buffs, dive enthusiasts. So if you're like a super diver or someone that wants a big, beefy, brawny watch that can take a beating. If you fit those categories, this watch is for you. If you're just looking for a watch that kind of gets the job done and tells you the time and looks nice, that's a lot of money to spend for those smaller features. But if I just describe someone who's looking for those things, if you fit any of those three categories, then this watch is for you. But if you're just a laissez-faire watch wearer, someone who is tinkering in watches, you have a very inexpensive Timex and you're looking to jump into your first dive watch, this is not for you, okay? So I just want to kind of keep it real. But if you are that guy, that is why I think this pricing makes a lot of sense. If you compare it to the Hamiltons of the world, the VARs, the Omegas, the Perseidas, this pricing is so fair and reasonable for the same exact features, for the same water resistance, for the same build material, the sapphire glass on the front, everything. The pricing is extremely comparable. It's actually pretty fair and reasonable for my research. You guys know how I like to do the fair and reasonable price comparisons. This one falls right in between all of those. So my final summation is it's not the most comfortable watch on the market, but it is one of the most durable. And it has some of the most charm of any of my watches. But comment down below, what do you think of the Type 1C by Benrus? Is it something that you would pick up? Is it going to be your next purchase? Is it a hard pass? I would still love to know what your comments down below. So if you're looking for a no-nonsense dive watch, this is one to consider. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you a part of the battalion. If this is your first time stopping by, well, welcome. Thank you. And thanks for joining the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.